Hey guys, it's Packy from the house, and today we're going to help out our friend Jason, who just recently switched from one-handed and is now bowling two-handed, and we're going to help him figure it out, give him some tips and tricks to bowl more strikes. So let's get into it. All right, so here we have Jason. He said he's recently switched to two-handed basically in the last couple of weeks, and he said he's been bowling one-handed for about 8 years, so that's a little background on him and his game. And I think a lot of those skills translate, and we'll talk about some that translate and some that I think he could work on to get a little better. But for the most part here, Jason's got a pretty good game. He's on balance, which is one of the biggest things I see. Right at the release, his spine tilt, he doesn't pop up too much. But he did reach out to us with specifics, which is something that I always like. He reached out to us with specifics. He said he switched from one-handed to two-handed and said he would like some help with his footwork as well as possibly his release. He said he's getting a little inconsistent ball roll since switching. So we're going to talk about why that is. And we'll also talk about some tips that we can give him just in terms of switching from one-handed to the two-handed game that he is now trying to learn. So it is kind of like learning to bowl all over again. He picks up a lot of the same skills, but the very first thing I noticed is he has a four-step approach. So that's not a bad thing. It just kind of is what it is. It's not bad. It's not good. It is what it is. But this could be a skill that's translated from his one-handed game, but he pushes it away a little late. So we see that, the ball starts to move, but his push away is so far away from him. He really launches it out that by the time his left leg is passing his right leg, the ball is still way out in front of him. So when we talk about timing and we talk about stuff like that, you want, when you're if you're a right-hander, on your second step of a four-step approach, when these feet come together and they're crossing each other, you want the ball to almost be down here in this location, if not close to it, where you're almost at the bottom of your swing. As we see with Jason, he doesn't get there until pretty much that third step starts to come around and starts to make its way over here as we see, this right foot starting to move. And that's when the ball gets to that good spot right here. So he's almost a half step late or a 3/4 of a step late. So I would say, if you're going to start the push away, it could just be holding it out a little further. So if we rewind here, it could be getting the ball up a little higher, where you're already where all you have to do is drop it in, where, you're up here instead of pushing it out there, where you start it up higher and you just drop it in instead of pushing it there. Or I would say, just try to lessen how far away you push the ball from yourself. Less away and more down is what I would say with your push away. And I think this will help you get into a little better timing and a little better spot, so you're not really rushing that follow through down below when you kind of pull it down from the top. The second thing I would say, about your game, I think your hand's in a really good position. I think it's in a strong position. I just kind of blew by it right there, but your hand's in a strong position. You got, it seems like you got good ball roll, but the problem is you're asking for more consistent ball roll. So one of the ways that you can do that is get a little more consistent slide. And this is probably, this is probably one of the bigger things that I noticed, which would be, when you're coming into this slide, you really want to go heel. You really want to go toe heel. So you want your foot coming down like this, toe to heel in this angle, and you have it coming the exact opposite direction, where you are planting your heel and your toe are like this. Your toe is facing the ceiling. So this is going to be a hard one to fix. You're not creating much of a slide at all. So if we go through it here, let me just play it in slow-mo. You might slide a couple inches. So that's one of the biggest things in terms of consistency, would be getting a consistent slide. And when you go heel to toe like that, it's hard for you to slide. And two, it's hard for you to really get a consistent release at the bottom. So I would suggest, working on creating some sort of slide where you can really utilize this push away. I see that foot digging into the ground there, and you basically just using it for nothing. Instead of, it's in a great spot to really drive your last step and push you closer to that foul line and push you into a great leverage position. You got it right here. It is in such a good spot. And then you just kind of bail on it. So one thing I want to see you utilize, and it could be in a one-step drill where you're just practicing, taking that very last step and pushing off, taking that last step and pushing off. It can be around your house. It can be at the bowling lane without a ball in your hand, or it can be at the foul line with a ball where you're swinging it to your side, and then you practice getting that last step in, pushing off and throwing it. So that would be one thing that I would suggest would be using a one-step drill or just practicing your approach in your house where you come toe to heel and you use a little bit of slide and you get a little bit more leverage under that ball. And I think leverage is the key. If you can get a good leverage and a good flat spot, and I'll explain what flat spot is in a second, but if you can get good leverage on the ball, you're not going to throw it into the ground as hard, and I can see you throw it into the ground strictly because the camera shakes when you throw it. So right there, the camera shakes. So you're throwing it into the ground pretty hard, and you release it pretty high off the ground. So I would say, the first thing, work on that push away not being so far away from you. The second thing I would say would be the slide. And then the third thing would be I would get a little more knee bend at the line. And I suggest this to pretty much almost everybody. But, I would say you especially, because you release it from so high up in the air and you throw it into the ground so hard, you're releasing it. Your swing, if I had to draw your swing pretty much would look like this. And then you release the ball and the ball goes like this. So if I could draw, what a swing should look like, it would be this big loop up and this big loop down. Whereas yours takes the big loop up and then it kind of just comes straight towards the ground like that. So one thing that I would say to you would be, try and get that knee bend so you can really release the ball a little cleaner onto the lane. And this is something that's going to help your ball roll a ton. If you can bend that knee and get lower to the line and get that timing a little more. So if you can work on that push away a little more and then get that knee lower, these two things are going to help your ball roll the most. And that slide is really just going to help with consistency from targeting to ball roll. That's just going to help everything, that slide. So if we could get that slide in check, that's probably the most important. The second most important, I would say, is your timing. And then the third would be bending your knee on that line. So if I could pick three things in order for you to work on, I would say number one thing would be, the number one thing would really be to try and get that leverage at the best spot where, we're talking about that knee bend and that push away, as well as, working on that timing. So if we can get that timing a little better, that would just really help us out. So, the slide probably is going to come first, then that push away. And then last, we're going to really try and get that, wow, I have lost my thought. We're going to get that slide. We're going to get that push away. And then we're going to get that knee bend in that order. I would say the knee bend, probably the last thing you really need to work on because you already have great balance, which is usually why I suggest that knee bend. But, in terms of things you need to work on, it's not much. You have a good game. And I would say there's not a whole lot of translation from one thing to the next. But I would just say the biggest thing that you can take from being one-handed to being two-handed is, your game. If you have a good one-handed game, you're naturally going to have a pretty good two-handed game. And then, like you do here. And then it's the minor things from there. It's from there we're talking about, a little earlier push away because the swing is a little bit different. Or a little more knee bend because you can't get your arm so close to the ground. Or working on a slide, which is probably something that you've just taken from your one-handed game. But you don't have as much control of your ball roll with your thumb in the ball. So you're going to have to use a little more leverage at the line, a little more consistent ways to get that ball roll. But yeah, I think you have a great game. I'd love for you to work on a couple of these things and send one back in because I think you're already at a great point. You have that one-handed game in the back of your mind, and now we're trying to focus in on what the difference between that one-handed and that two-handed game is. And honestly, it's not much. It's just the little things like that push away, the timing, getting a little closer to the foul line, and then something that I would have suggested anyway if you were one-handed would be working on that slide a little bit. So thanks for sending a video in. We appreciate it, Jason, and we look forward to giving you another one in hopefully a month or two when you got a chance to work on these things. Thanks for sending one in. Thanks for watching, guys. And as always, if you guys want a coaching review of your own, or if you guys want to support us on Patreon, we have links down below in the description for you guys to click on and get those discounts or help us out on Patreon. Thanks for sticking around to the end. We hope you guys learned something with every single one of these videos and stick around for the next one. We'll see you guys next time.